Hi guys, I am Edellnn and welcome to my channel. Since this is my first video, I thought it would be fitting to introduce myself before we get into the video. I am a student living in beautiful Austria. I started, or better to say, I am starting this channel to practice my English by myself and, let's be honest, to have a side hustle. I know, I have a pretty bad accent, hence the subtitles. But hopefully it will get better and we won't need any subtitles in the near future. So, on with the video. Before we begin, let me ask you a simple question. Have you ever played or even heard of Dark Messiah? It's a video game from 2006 with amazing physics and beautiful combat mechanics. You haven't? Well, don't worry, because neither have I. I was only 6 years old when that game came out, so it's no wonder I'd never heard of it. But the game we are going to talk about today is its spiritual successor. It is none other than Fatekeeper. Although calling Fatekeeper a game is actually a little bit of an exaggeration. In its current state, it feels much more like a tech demo. The game has absolutely astonishing graphics. There were so many moments where I just stopped moving and admired the scenery. The atmosphere of standing on top of a mountain, traveling through forgotten ruins, and exploring caves from an ancient civilization is simply amazing. However, visuals alone don't make a game. You need actual gameplay. You need something that lets the players interact with those beautiful visuals. Otherwise, you're not really playing a game, you're just watching a very expensive visual novel. So, how was the gameplay? Well, let's just say I found exactly what I was expecting. The physics in this game are the best I have ever seen in a video game. Every swing of my sword, every strike with my axe, I could actually feel the weight and impact of every hit. You can both feel and see the damage you are dealing to your enemies. It feels just amazing. And yes, you can kick. Kicking enemies off cliffs or breaking their guard feels incredibly satisfying. Although sometimes you can accidentally send enemies flying dozens of meters into the air. One problem I noticed during combat though was the hitboxes. There aren't many first person games where your main weapon is a sword, and in the few that exist, aiming your melee attacks usually isn't much of a challenge. You just left click, and if the enemy is standing within 1 meter of you, you hit them. Fatekeeper doesn't work like that. You actually have to aim your weapon. Mindlessly spamming left click won't save you from these ugly, orc looking mutant things. As you can clearly see, I struggled quite a bit trying to hit them. Besides light attacks, heavy attacks, and kicks, you can also dodge and block. Blocking at the right moment really feels like it should trigger a parry because of the sound effects. But I couldn't notice any special animation or gameplay mechanic that actually rewards good timing. Maybe they'll add parrying later, or maybe I am just an idiot and completely missed it. Then we have magic. Ah, if you ask me, it is the weakest part of the combat right now. The spells aren't very effective and there are still plenty of visual bugs, especially with the frost spell. Magic feels more like an emergency button you use to save yourself during melee combat rather than something you can build your entire character around. I didn't really enjoy it, and honestly, I mostly used it just for this video. There's also crafting. You can combine different mushrooms and ingredients to create health potions, mana potions, or even mix different effects together. You can craft bombs and coat your weapons with different kinds of poison. You can slow enemies down, drain their health to restore your own. It is a fun system, especially the mixing part, but I think it still has some room for improvement. There are also quite a few weapons and armor sets you can find throughout the game. Each weapon feels different. Some hit harder but slower, while others are much faster but rarely tickle your enemies. And of course, we can't forget the skill tree. Well, in its current state, it is more of a buff tree than a skill tree. Most of the skills are things like 5% more damage or 10% more health. There are different paths that improve your melee combat, your magic, or your health and stamina. I don't know whether this was intentional or just a bug, but after choosing one path, I couldn't unlock skills from other paths. If that's intentional, it reminds me a little of Path of Exile 2. If it's actually a bug, well, that just sucks for me, I guess. There are also some attempts at puzzles. Uh, who am I kidding? Calling these puzzles is already being generous. Most of them are basically there is a closed door. 5 meters away, there is a lever. Use your telekinesis spell to pull the lever and run to the door before it closes. If magic is the weakest part of the combat, then these puzzle attempts are probably the weakest puzzles I have ever seen in my entire life. Thankfully, there aren't many of them. The game is pretty linear, there aren't many places to explore, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Not every game has to be a massive open world. Sometimes it is perfectly fine to enter a dungeon and simply enjoy crawling through it. So, we are climbing mountains, killing enemies invading our land, and following a cool magical rat that can talk. But why are we here? What is our goal? That is a very good question, and I have absolutely no idea. All I know is that we are a newly trained druid traveling through the ancient ruins of our civilization, which have been invaded by these orc things. I still don't even know what they are actually called. The game takes about 2 hours if you rush through it. If you take your time and experiment with different builds, it will probably take around 5 to 7 hours. I intentionally only showed the first hour because I didn't want to spoil the more interesting parts, especially since the game is already so short. Like I said earlier, it feels much more like a tech demo than early access game. But considering it is only 10 euros and already offers a gameplay that's honestly unlike anything else out there, I'd say it is absolutely worth the price. I really hope the developers keep updating it and eventually turn it into a polished 15 to 20 hours dungeon crawler. Oh, by the way, I had DLSS enabled the entire time. Apart from a few areas, I didn't notice any major FPS drop. That being said, the game definitely demands a decent PC, especially because it's running on Unreal Engine 5. And that's it for Fatekeeper. I hope you enjoyed my very first video. If you enjoyed hanging out with me, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. Ciao!